Hi, in this video I'll be demonstrating how to solve this rough idle on the C180 compressor. This is a 2006 C-Class Mercedes, and as you can see, the engine has this rough idle. If I zoom in, you'll be able to see the engine there. You can see how the engine is wobbling, and I'll just play you the sound it makes. Right, so I've scanned the errors and I'll quickly show you the errors. So even when I scan it, it actually says mass airflow sensor. So what I need to do now is replace that mass airflow sensor. Just a note, if you get the error mass airflow sensor, it doesn't always mean it's a mass airflow sensor. It could be a vacuum leak, it could be a coil. There are many other things that could give rise to that error of a mass airflow sensor, but in this case I know it is a mass airflow sensor fault. The W203 compressor has the mass airflow sensor here. It's a bit of a mission to get to. Here's the replacement. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to remove this, so I'm now going to walk you through the process. These are T23. Notice they do not come out all the way. So I can remove the cover, I can remove the air filter. Now I'm just going to remove this. Right, there are two screws on either side there. It's a Torx, but you might find that your socket cannot get in there. What I do is I use a normal hex. So I just used a size 8. The screw doesn't come out, you just loosen it. So while the screw wants this is an E head, I just used the normal size 8 hex. Right, the next step is to remove all the connectors. The mass airflow sensor is here, and I remove that connector. There's a connector over here which slides out. Then there's a connector over here. Just squeeze the back and slide it out. Right, then there's a pipe over here which needs to be removed. Then these two big connectors over here, I slide this out. And as I slide it out, it lifts up. Same over here, there's a puller at the back, and then you can remove the connector. I just separated these two so I can have this connector on that side and this connector over here, because there's a clamp that needs to be removed over here. Right, so if you follow the pipe towards the end, there's a clamp, and you'll need a special tool or a very long nose pliers to bring those two pieces together. Alright, so there you can see I'm using a very long nose pliers to squeeze those two ends together. That and that side must be brought together in order to release this plastic pipe. Right, once you've unhooked that, you'll need to pull upwards. So I've already pulled it upwards, so it has been released from that pipe. Now I need to remove this. To remove this, I need to slide it back. You can only slide this back once you've released the clip there. Now I can push this whole unit backwards. There we go. Right, so here's that clamp. Now to get the mass airflow sensor out, I need to use a T20. There's a screw there and a screw in here. And there's a third screw on the underside. Right, and then there's the unit that's separated from this side. There's a rubber over here, so it might be quite difficult to get that out. And now I'll show you the difference between the old and the new, and then I'll install the new. Right, I'm just going to show you an electrical measurement here. I have the old one over here, the new one here, my multimeter set to ohms. I'm going to put the negative lead on the pin 1 and the positive lead on pin 2. Notice my meter is saying basically mega ohms. It's very high impedance. Now I'm going to swap these around, and still pin 1 and pin 2. Notice still mega ohms, so that is too high. Now I'm going to the new one, and I'm still keeping the positive on this side. My meter is not giving me a good reading, but if I swap these around, you'll see that the resistance is much lower. There's 7 kilo ohms. Right, now I've put it on a diode test, and I'm just measuring the pin 1 and pin 2. Notice there it's 0.36 volts to forward bias that diode. So we can see there's definitely a difference in the electrical characteristic of the old and the new. Right, so that's what the old one looks like inside. Right, there's the new one. You can see that the components there do look a bit different. Looks like a diode is in there. Anyway, it's time to install this on the vehicle. Right, so the old one, the new one, there's a rubber seal here. I need to take it off, and I'm going to put it here on the new one. Now there's a lip there, and a hole there, and then there's a space there. So this lines up like that, and I just press it in there. Right, now it is tight inside there, and now it's time to fit this onto this side. Fit your 3 screws, 1, 2, and the third one on the underside. Right, so what I've done is I've looped this wire around the one side, and then I've threaded it through this hole, and I'm going to manually pull this open because I don't have the tool to do this while it's on the vehicle. And as I pull this open, I'm tightening this wire, and eventually I'll bring these two together. I'll lock the wire in place, and then I'll go install this on the car. Then I'll install the other pipe and just cut this wire, and it will get all tight. Right, you can also thread it on the underside there, which is also helpful. Now I'm going to pull this. Try to get it done on the first try, otherwise the wire gets dented. Right, so now that is tight, now I can go and put it on the vehicle. I can actually squeeze this together and retighten it. You don't want the wire on the inside though. Right, so here is the bracket. Notice that I've tied it there. There's no wire on the inside. I can now seat this on the other pipe. Just to show you, it is much bigger than this one, so it's not going to be such a problem inserting that back onto the pipe that's there on the side of the engine. Right, so there it's ready. Just make sure the clamp is over the pipe. Don't let the pipe get stuck in the slit of the clamp. Right, now notice this over here goes in there. That is why, in order to get this out, you have to slide it back. Something else to be aware of is these screws. As you can see, they might get in the way. This is also something to be aware of when you're trying to get this out. These screws, if they are sitting like that, they'll block you from coming out. So when you're trying to get this out, just be aware of these screws, and the same when you're trying to push it in, just be aware of these screws. While you're here, just make sure you check the vacuum hose. Here I can see the hose is in good condition. It's been replaced recently. Right, I'm visually inspecting the wiring here. These are the fuel injectors. Now putting this back. We're going to have this plug upwards so you can seat this in, otherwise you can't have space. Right, so I first slid it into the two sides over there, then I pushed it into the back of the pipe over there, and now I can just release that clamp so it's tight on that pipe. Right, so make sure that pipe is sitting nicely and that clamp is holding that pipe in place. You don't want a vacuum leak. Right, I just tighten these two screws. Return this pipe over here. Return this connector here. There's a definitive click once you've returned it. This connector over here. Right, the mass airflow sensor connector. These two join together, and they slide onto a post over here. You could replace the air filter while you're here. Right, check that everything's secure, check that the plugs are plugged in correctly. Right, so I've cleared the errors. You might find that if you don't clear the errors, you still get that rough idle. I've cleared the errors, and now you can see that the car has a very good idle. And everything is up and running back to normal. Thanks for watching, and cheers.